All right, so today we are going on with the Deuteromistic history, which means it's heavily influenced by the writers or the editors of the book of Deuteronomy. In your Protestant Bible, in the Protestant Bibles, I say our Protestant Bibles because in the Hebrew Bibles, things are a little bit out of order or in a different order. But we put it in the history section of our Bibles. If you look in the context of the history sections, it will follow the conquest of land in the Hebrew Bible. It goes straight after Judges. There's no roof there. It follows the conquest of the land and the settlement of the land, which is in Judges. But the primary function we're going to see in the Samuels, or in Samuel, in the Hebrew it's just one scroll. There's no first and second, it's just one. It provides a gap, a bridge between the judges and the monarchy, the time of the kings. All right. As we go on, what's the main character of the book of Samuel? God! I knew you'd say that. I've asked that question a few times now. God's the main character. That was a trick question. God's the main character. God is the main character. There are the three primary earthly characters of this are First Samuel will be Samuel, Saul, and David. Second Samuel, interesting enough, doesn't have Samuel in it. It's all about David. The reason it's called Samuel is because it's one scroll, where it begins with the main character, Samuel. It is not written by Samuel. We actually don't know the author of the book of Samuel. But Samuel is the main character. Yes. Sure, why not? The truth is, there could have been. It was probably put together over time from various sources. A lot of people think the same editors that did the final form of Deuteronomy are the ones who put this together, probably during the time of the exile in Babylon, when they started actually writing things down. Remember, before the exile, a lot of it was oral history. And then some things were written down, chronicles of this guy, memoirs of that person, the book of war or whatever. And then they would collect these things and put them together into one final form. These didn't just magically appear in their final form. They were collected over years and years of work. Yeah. Were they an ongoing thing? In the sense that there was a bunch of chronicles being written and things being written and oral traditions being told, and yes. Okay. And then at some point, it was written down completely. Was it like the book of Samuel was written and they add to it? And then as it goes on, someone adds to it? I don't think so, but I don't know that.
If whoever's doing the scribing,
Yes.
is a Hebrew.
Yes.
Okay. Were they, whoever that person was, as that individual got older and somebody else did they keep growing in that way? Or was there like a point in time when they said, okay, we're done and we're going to write all of this and that's the end?
Well, it was probably something more like we've just lost our home. Jerusalem's been destroyed. Our language is something. We better write this stuff down.
Okay. That makes sense.
And so they got together and wrote it down, gathered up some sources from here and there, and said, let's write this down. That's probably more like what it looked like. But, I mean, we don't know that. That's just, we have found early copies, but our earliest copies are still really not that old. Just because paper falls apart, stone erodes, and people are really dumb with books. They fall apart. So, all right, so, but Samuel is the first character, the first main character in the scroll of Samuel, and so they call it Samuel. And it will begin in 1 Samuel with the birth and the call of Samuel. And it will really take up chapters 1 through 3. Now, I'm not going to read all of 1 through 3, but it's a really nice story. It really takes place with Elkanah, the father of Samuel, who has 2 wives. Right? We've already heard this story, right? He has 2 wives. One is is barren, and one is very fertile. We've heard this story. It's a common theme in the scriptures. Hannah, the favorite of the 2, is a favorite, but she's barren, so she has, so she might be really liked, but she has less honor in that society and less power, and she's tormented because she's barren. This is a pattern we're seeing over and over again. And anytime you have a barren woman who we get the sense that she's going to give birth, we know there's something special about that child. That's a pattern we're seeing over and over and over in the scriptures. And interesting enough, we see that with even Elizabeth in the New Testament. And then we see quite the reversal of that with Jesus, right? She's not barren. She's pregnated before she even has sex, which is this miraculous thing. So it's kind of this reversal of the pattern we've seen in the scriptures. Kind of cool to look at that. I don't know if there's anything there, but it's kind of cool. But Hannah and Peninnah. And Peninnah torments Hannah because she's barren, but Hannah is the favorite wife of the husband and is treated differently. So one year they go, and they're going every year, to Shiloh for a festival. Now Shiloh is a religious place. They, remember, the temple is not in Jerusalem yet. The tabernacle is not in Jerusalem yet. That is, David will be, the Ark of the Covenant won't be brought in until the time of David, so it's not there yet. Shiloh is one of the main religious centers of the time. And so they go to Shiloh for a festival. Hannah goes to the temple to pray, and she's praying so earnestly that Eli thinks she's drunk. Now, I don't know what kind of praying she's doing, but she's praying. And the high priest there thinks she's drunk. When Eli goes to scold her for being drunk in the temple area, the tabernacle area, she tells him of her distress. And he tells her God will hear her prayers and says, go in peace. Now, interesting enough, this is like the only good thing he does, like in his entire, like if you read the scriptures, this is like the only good thing the Bible really has to say about this man. I mean, we'll see him later on as a very passive, letting his sons get away with all kinds of stuff he shouldn't be letting get away with, not leading, but here he says, go in peace. And it may have been platitude. I mean, how many times have you heard that, right? God hears you. He'll take care of you. We say those kind of platitudes all the time, don't we? Someone's sick. I'll pray for you. It may have just been a platitude. We don't know, but he's speaking as high praise. And she becomes pregnant. And she names him Samuel, which means heard from God. So Hannah will pray. I like this. This is chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. Hannah prayed, "My heart rejoices in the Lord. My heart is lifted up by the Lord. My mouth boasts over my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. There is no one holy like the Lord. There is no one beside you, and there is no rock like our God. Do not boast so proudly or let arrogant word come out of your mouth, for the Lord is God of knowledge and actions are weighed by him. The bows of the warrior are broken, but the feeble are clothed with strength. Those who are full hire themselves out for food, but those who are starving hunger no more. The woman who is childless gives birth to 7, but the woman with many sons pines away. The Lord brings death and gives life. He sends down to Sheol and raises others up. The Lord brings poverty and gives wealth. He humbles and he exalts. He raises the poor from dust. He lifts the needy from the trash heap. He seats him with noble and gives them a throne of honor. For the foundation of the earth are the Lord's. He has set the world on them. He guards the steps of the faithful one, but the wicked perish in darkness, for a person does not prevail by his own. Those who oppose the Lord will be shattered. He will thunder in the heavens against them. The Lord will judge the end of the earth. He will give power to the kings. He will lift up the horn of the anointed. Elkanah went home to Ramah, but the boy served the Lord in his presence of the priest of Eli. This praise she gives. Actually, several people have commented on the similarities that Mary gives when she finds out the birth that Jesus is going to be born. But at some point, Samuel is given to the church. Now, this is a type of human sacrifice. That's what this is really functioning on. It's not the child sacrifice of the no-no kind, right? We're not killing the kid. We're not burning them down. This is the type of child sacrifice where that the Levites are the representatives of the firstborn. And they take their place in the temple because they represent the firstborn of Israel. And here Samuel is directly the firstborn being sacrificed unto the Lord by giving his life for the Lord's in dedication. So we're seeing a sacrifice going on here. And Hannah is going to sacrifice him in hopes that the Lord will bless her with further fertility, which is often why they did child sacrifices in those days, when the days of Isaiah and other pagan gods, is because they wanted you to sacrifice one for so that you'll have further fertility, and so we see this is sacrifice. But he will be raised. Now we don't know exactly what year, at what point she leaves him. It's when he's weaned. Now, weaning in that time period, remember there's no drinkable water, very little actual drinkable water for a child. Children die, childbirth, is very very realistic that they might die. Weaning can last from anywhere from 2 years to even as far as 6 years. So we don't know at what point Samuel goes to the care of Eli, but when he's weaned, whatever that is, he goes and he's left. It could have been, it could have been when he was 2, could have been when he was 6 years old. I can't imagine leaving a kid like that. It would. But she will leave him to become a priest her own. So she'll be raised by Eli. Now, God will give her 3 more sons and 2 daughters following this act of sacrifice. Now, so he'll be raised by Eli to be a priest. Now, he's never really supposed to be the high priest because that's, a family line. Now, Eli will have 2 sons of his own. Phineas and Hophni. These 2 men are why we should, are another prime example of why these kind of things should not be genetically passed down. Let the Lord choose the men, not genetics. Phineas and Hophni, they have no regard for the Lord. They're greedy, irreverent, immoral. 1 Samuel 2:12, 2:12 through 17. I'm just going to read you a small section. This is some of the things they're doing. Eli's sons were wicked men. We might want to just stop there. They did not respect Yahweh, or the priest share the sacrifice from the people. When anyone offered a sacrifice, the priest's servant would come with a 3-pronged forked meat while the meat was boiling and plunge it into the container, the kettle, the cauldron, or the cooking pot. And the priest would claim for himself what the meat brought up. This is part of the way they provide for the priest. If you're doing like the priest who's acting as your priest and being your sacrifice, it was when you're offering a sacrifice, they would put it in the boiling water as part of the cooking process. And when it's tender, you stick a fork in it. And when you bring it up, whatever meat's on there, that's what you get to keep. And that was one of the ways the priest got fed. That was normal. But here's what they're doing. All right? This way they treated all the resistants who came as Shilohs. But here's what they're doing. Even before the fat was born, the priest servant would come and say to the one who was sacrificing, give the priest some meat to roast, because he won't accept boiled meat from you, only raw. So, remember you're cooking. Boiled meat, you stick in, tender, it's going to pull off a little bit of meat. Raw meat, what happens? You get what comes, the whole thing. It's not tender, it's going to come with you. You're going to get a big old chunk of meat. So he can cook it up himself. He's essentially, they're stealing from God. If the person says to him, the fat must be burned first, then you can take whatever you want. The servant was replied, no, I insist that you hand it over right now. If you don't, I'll take it by force. So not only are they taking it inappropriately, if anyone calls them out on it, they're forcibly taking it. Now that's just a small section of what they're doing. We also see that they're having sex inside the temple. They're not obeying the rule. They have no regard for what the Lord teaches. They're not. They are not. Now Eli in 2:22 says, Eli was very old. He heard everything his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they were sleeping. Here's how they were sleeping with women who served and at the tent of meetings. He said to them, "Why are you doing these things? I have heard about your evil actions from these people. No, my son, the news I hear from the people is spreading. It is not good. If one person sins against another, God can intercede on him. But if a person sins against Yahweh, who can intercede on him?" But they would not listen to their father, since the Lord intended to kill them. But Phinehas and Hophni, Eli is seen as a very, hey guys, stop this. But he doesn't take any action. He doesn't take any charge, which will be a charge against him when it's time for him to be removed from office. He's all this is happening under his watch, and he may be old, but he's not dead. And he says, "I'm hearing was, you may not be paying attention, but even the word is getting out. He said, what are you guys doing?" And instead of saying, "No, you guys stop. I'm gonna, I'm gonna force you out, or something. He had options. He just kind of lets them keep doing, and says, "Oh, my sons, I can't do anything against them." They were not disciplined, but it seems like he as the father is choosing his kids over God, which is a hard choice for any parent to make. Eli's family will eventually lose the privilege of serving in the shrine, the whole family, and they all die in the same day. All right. Chapter 3 will continue on with the call of Samuel. Now, Samuel has grown up. He's a young boy. We don't exactly get it like, hey, he's 12. We don't get any of that. He's a young boy, whatever stage young boy means. And he hears a voice calling his name. And he thinks it's Eli. And he goes to old man and says, "Hey, what do you want?" "I didn't call you, go back to bed." And then he hears the voice again. He hears him, "I didn't call you, go back to bed." Which, as I imagine Eli, who's got his own problems right now, is kind of getting irritated. Go back to bed. How many times did your kids wake you up in the middle of the night? Go back to bed. But eventually, after this happening 3 times, Eli realizes what's happening, tells the boy, "Answer, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." And Samuel will follow, and God will call Samuel to be the leader. And in this call of leadership, he will also condemn Eli and the family line. And Samuel will become the next leader of really the last of the judges. Though he's more of a priest than a judge, but he's kind of seen as the last of the judges. And he will be fighting the Philistines. Remember, we talked about the judges, going against, God raises up someone to deliver them. Well, he's going to be fighting the Philistines. I guess we could read. Yeah. 1 Samuel 4 through 6. And I'm going to read just a section here. "And Samuel's word came to all of Israel. Israel went out to meet the Philistines in battle and camped at Ebenezer, while the Philistines camped at Aphek. The Philistines lined up in battle formation against Israel, and the battle intensified. Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who struck down 4,000 men on the battlefield." So we got this war going on. Now, So they're going to call for the ark. Now remember, this is the Ark of the Covenant, not the ark that, the boat. It's the Ark of the Covenant, the seat of God. Now we're looking at a map actually here where it's going to travel from Shiloh, where it's being kept in that temple shrine area, and this is where the battle is taking place right here in Israel. There's Jerusalem. We're not part of Jerusalem yet. And it's going to travel around a bit. Now, the ark is a symbol of God's presence. Now, remember, it's just said that the Philistines defeated them in battle. Where are they? Let me go back to that passage. 4,000. When the troops returned to camp, the elders of Israel asked, "Why did the Lord defeat us today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the Lord's covenant from Shiloh, and it will give us our enemies and go with us to save us from our enemies." They're like, "Let's bring our secret weapon, Ark of the Covenant." And I don't know if they were expecting something like the Nazis in that movie, the Ark of the... But no, they said, let's bring it out. It's going to fight. And so they call for the ark. Now, the Philistines are a growing nation, and they will attack the Israelites. The Philistines live in this area over here. Now, interesting enough, the river, there's a big old sea right here. The Mediterranean Sea is right here. So if Philistine starts to grow, where does it have to go? Into Israel. They have two options here. They can go into Israel or into this big old desert down here where there's no life. Into the desert where there's no life is not really a good option. So they're going to choose. That's why they're always at war with each other, because Philistines are bumping heads with each other. And they will plan. The Philistines will actually plan on attacking and cutting the nation in half and driving through to the mountains of the Jordan. Now the Philistines have this unique thing that Israel does not at this time. It's called iron. Now we take for granted iron. The Philistines are on the sea. They're trading with other nations. Israel is not. They have iron weapons. It's far superior to anything that Israel has at this time. So it's no wonder that they walk through the Israelites. They have better weaponry. So let's call for the ark. That's our secret weapon. That's going to defeat these iron weapons. Yeah, it usually is. So the call for the ark, except it's being carried by these two ungodly, wicked men, Phinehas and Hophni. Unholy men carrying a holy object, and they think it's going to defeat them just because it's a holy object. The Bible kind of has this theme running through it all the time. It doesn't, just because God is holy doesn't mean we can rely on His holiness to defeat all our battles. We have to be holy too, because He's called us to be holy. And these unholy men are relying on this item, which represents God, but it isn't God. So just why? Because why not? They're not doing anything for this holiness. Now, Phinehas and Hophni will be killed in this battle, and the Ark of the Covenant will be captured. Now, we got to remember at this time that if a nation is defeated, especially a holy relic like this, a holy item like that, it is seen as the gods themselves are at war, and in the minds of the people, The Philistines' gods just defeated Yahweh. That's why the ark will be taken to the temple. A holy item being taken to another god's temple to claim it as victory over Yahweh. Now, a messenger will take word back to Eli. And it says that Eli dies of shock. Phinehas' wife dies giving birth to a son. They name him Ichabod. If you're looking for children's names, that's not the one you want to go with. Sorry. Ichabod means the glory of God has departed. Yeah. Brings a whole new level to that Ichabod Crane story in the Sleepy Hollow. What a good book. So the ark will be taken to Ashdod. So they were up here fighting the battle. The ark is taken. The Israelites are surrounded, and it'll be taken to Ashdod, where there's a temple of the Philistine god Dagon. Dagon, some people interpret it meaning little fish. There's an argument out there, but we're not going to get into that. Sometimes it's depicted like this, like a merman kind of thing. Other times it's depicted totally different. The Philistine idol, it's been adopted from other non-Israelite people in the land of Canaan who got this from the Babylonians. So originally this came in its original form, not this form, in its original form from the Babylonians. The Philistine Dagon, however, is usually portrayed half fish, half man. This Dagon is the same Dagon we saw in Samson's stories. The temple that was pulled down by Samson. It'll also be at the beheading of King Saul. But anyways, this ark will be taken to Ashdod and the temple to show Dagon's superiority and defeat over the Israelite God. Now, Dagon himself is a fertility god. He's over the water. Obviously, he's a fish god, right? Water represents chaos, but it also represents life. Life represents storms and all of fertility. You know, all life comes from the rivers. So it's a fertility god. And so they take the statue and they put it at the feet of Dagon. Now, the first morning, Dagon was, when they woke up, the statue has fallen down on his face before the ark. So they put the statue back up. You know, that was weird. The next day, it's fallen, and the hands and the face have broken off as it's fallen down. And they see this destruction of their God is bowing down before the ark. Now, on the next day, a plague strikes Ashdod. Now, the word there in the Hebrew, ophalim, means to rise. Now, we have no idea what kind of plague this was. It's the word to rise. Different theories. Hemorrhoids, tumors, bubonic plague, My personal favorite, since Dagon is a fertility god, an ED, erectile dysfunction. I think it's most fitting as Dagon, the fertility god. But we don't know what it meant. We don't know what the word to rise means. So your different translations may say tumors or boils or all kinds of different things, because we don't know exactly what this means, and we have different theories and stuff like that. But there was this plague that strikes, and so that's Ashdod. Actually, I want to take a moment, and I'm going to have to go around and hit play on this. This is a video I found on Ashdod. Kind of give you a feel for where the ruins. They walk through the ruins of Ashdod. It's only about 3 minutes long, so I like these videos. Let me walk around. And we'll kill a couple of these lights in the front so you guys can see it better. For those of you listening online, I'll try to put the link in the description.
Ashdod was one of the 5 principal cities of the Philistines in biblical history. In fact, its ancient history by the Mediterranean Sea goes back to at least Canaanite times. The Philistines and Israelites were continually battling with one another during the time of Joshua, the Judges, and the early kingdom. During the Battle of Ebenezer, the Philistines defeated Israel and in the process captured the Ark of the Covenant that had been ill-advisedly brought from the capital of Shiloh. The triumphant Philistines brought the Ark to Ashdod and placed it in the temple of their god, Dagon. The next day, when they came into the temple, Dagon had fallen before the Ark of the Covenant. They put him back in place, but the following day, they found the idol fallen before the Ark. This time, his head and hands had been broken off. A plague of tumors broke out among the Philistines, who began to fear the God of Israel's judgment on them. They moved the ark from Ashdod to Gath and then to Ekron, where plague broke out on the people until the ark was returned to the children of Israel. Later, during the 1st century Roman era, the city was called Azotus. As the early church was being formed, the Apostle Philip was instructed by an angel to follow the road from Jerusalem to Gaza. Upon this road, he met an Ethiopian eunuch and explained the gospel to him, baptizing him. Philip was spirited away after this encounter and was next seen in Ashdod, Azotus, where he preached the gospel and made his way north along the coast toward Caesarea. Historical Ashdod is now a largely unexcavated archaeological site that contains the remains of Canaanite, Philistine, Israelite, Roman, Byzantine, Crusader, and Arab signatures. Modern Ashdod sits 12 miles north of Ashkelon and 33 miles west of Jerusalem. It is Israel's 5th largest city and its largest port.
You like that? I like those videos. You guys all have access to them on the Faith Life TV. If you're, for those listening online, a member of our Faith Life group. But anyway, so the people, so the people of Ashdod decide that the people of Gath, they have the right to have this holy relic. It's not because of a plague. They believe that people of Gath has the right to keep this ark, and the people of Gath will have some sores on them. A plague will break out in Gath down here. People of Gath will say, "Well, Ekron needs to have it. They deserve the right to keep this holy item." And Ekron will just say, "Hey, let's get rid of this thing." What they do is they hitch it to an untrained ox, and they just kind of send it out. No one's taking it. They just hit it on this ox and send the ox out into the land and say, well, they'll find it. And it is found. When it is found, they break up the cart and kill the ox and sacrifice the ox right there and there to the Lord. The ark will be taken to a private home and will remain there until David brings it to Jerusalem. So the ark will disappear for a good period of time and just be taken to this private home. Interesting enough, kind of like it's done now. It's disappeared. We don't know where it's at. There are different groups that claim it, however. All right, so 1 Samuel 7 through 12 really deals with the work of Samuel, in which we'll see, I'm going to kind of sum up all that section right there. We'll see the 4 roles of Samuel. Priest, he's going to intercede and offer sacrifice. He's going to be a judge. He's going to be the last of the great battles he's going to experience the last great battle of the judges. He'll call people back to God. He's also a judge in the modern sense. When we think of the word judge, he's going to administer justice, which the other judges have not done. They were judges in the sense of bringing people back to God's righteousness. He's going to be a prophet, which means he's going to speak the word of God. And he's going to be one of the few prophets in the scripture that also is somewhat more like a fortune teller as well. People come to him to do things like, where's my donkey? We're going to see that story coming up. He's going to be more of a fortune teller kind of guy as well. So he's going to have almost a unique gift in the scriptures. Most of the prophets in the scriptures don't have that kind of, there's Elijah and Elisha that have that kind of stuff. But most of the prophets in the scriptures, especially the age of the prophets, they're just spokesmen for God. They're not like, where's my donkey? They're going to, I don't care. I'm going to lay around naked for days on my side. I'm going to build sandcastles and destroy it. But he's also, and this is probably the most famous thing he does, he's a king maker and a king breaker. He will see to the election and anointing of Saul. He will later anoint David. And he will break Saul. He anoints him and breaks him as well. So, maker, breaker. Samuel will have both good and bad qualities about him. He's a man of God, does what God wants, but he also seems to have a hard time letting go of his position of authority and power, which does seem to be a negative on his part.